All right, all right. Y'all, welcome y'all to another show of As a Man Thinks. And this is still season 1. This is episode 3. And today we have a guest. And it's my first guest. And why wouldn't my first guest be this lovely young lady right here, Jamie?
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I am honored to be your first guest.
I know, right? Very thankful that you agreed to do this. I know that you're a busy person, and for you to take time out your day to share some of your thoughts and some of your crazy stories, or not crazy, but just stories. Pretty sure the people would be interested in hearing your thoughts on our subject for today, which is our subject today is generational beliefs and how they impacted you, whether it be in a positive or negative way. I do know that the things that we saw and we experienced growing up, we definitely, had thoughts about them, and we said, hey, we believe grandma, mama, daddy, uncle, whoever, cousins. We believed what they showed us, and sometimes we held on to the wrong things, or sometimes we took the good things and we really drew motivation from it. So, with that being said, let's talk about family and the family dynamic of the beliefs that, our family bestowed upon us, and it may have been things that were passed down. So I'll swing it to you. What do you think is one of the most impactful things that you experienced growing up that you carried on with you, up until this day?
One of the most impactful things, that's a really good question. The one thing that really stands out is probably my grandmother. I grew up in my grandmother's house, and it was a family house where everybody stayed. It was like her kids plus, their kids. So like 2 or 3 generations were in that house. And so one thing that I always learned about how she moved and how she operated was, she had a husband and she wanted to make sure her husband saw her in a certain light. So no matter what she did during the day, when he came home, dinner was cooked at a certain time. She was always put together by the time he walked through the door. I would always be like, Grandmommy, why are you moving so fast? It'd be 3:00 and she starts shifting and, okay, Jamie, start, get it together. But she just taught me, she always said, you want to look good for your man. You want to make sure you don't get complacent. You want to feed him. He's bringing home the bacon. He's doing his part. You need to do your part. So with that being said, as a woman, that's something that I live off of. I think about her when I'm trying to get myself together and make sure that I look presentable for my husband and keeping the house together and cooking a meal. So that's one thing.
So with that being said, your grandmother was a stay-at-home mom, grandmother, for the most part.
Yes.
And so you mentioned bringing home the bacon. So now that in today's time, you took that, which is not a bad thing, because I don't think it's a bad thing, because I definitely appreciate you looking like a movie star every time you come out the room, but for other women, who are working and they, just like their mate is working and they sharing the household responsibilities. What do you think about that then? Like if you were working, like you was, your commute time, 3 hours total a day, and you're coming home and you may not have been looking your best, because you've been in the car for an hour and a half in traffic, 2 hours. And so what do you think about the women that the women that experienced that And do you think that it was still, do you think that they should still have that mindset?
I do. I do. I still, because I mean, I was working, like you just said, I was commuting and doing the same thing. It's just, you just have to prioritize a little bit better. And with that, my mom, she was always the type of mom when I was younger to always prepare. Like, so, on Sundays was the day where she did a lot of her cooking. So she may have done 3 or 4 meals to make sure that she didn't have to run to McDonald's every single day, but she would prepare on a Sunday. So now all you got to do is, okay, baby, if you make it home before me, then you could just pull this out and the chicken's already cooked or, whatever. So there's ways around it. I'm not saying that I'm going to come in looking, fresh and rejuvenated. But, it's still, you still have to be mindful with everything, as far as being intentional about how you're showing up in the relationship, I think.
Okay. I can dig that. Okay. So how about, well, I'll save that one. So as for me, one of the biggest positive things that was a generational belief for me of how I was raised, what I saw. Of course, I saw my dad. He was with my mom maybe 3-4 years before I was born, and then right after high school, back in those days, he didn't go to college. He went and got a job. He was working at General Motors. My grandfather, once I was old enough, I knew he worked for this DWP. My uncles, they all had jobs. 2 of my uncles drove trucks at first, then my other uncle started working, whatever. So a lot of people in my family, as far as the men, like you said, your grandfather, I took the role of always go get money, and theirs was through a job. My grandfather did tell me, of course, many people know, hey, know how to do something with your hands, you never be broke. That still holds true to this day, even with society being the way it is. If you know how to do something with your hands, you can go make some side money from your regular job if you're sitting at a desk all day. So that was a big belief of mine. I believe that, hey, if I'm going to have a family, I need to provide like your grandfather did. And that's why your grandmother tried, she looked at like $1 million when he came home, dinner on the table, hot meal, he working all day. He gon', all that. So that was a big thing for me. A lot of guys I know, as I got older, they didn't have that belief. They just did enough to go by. They did enough to get by. I knew dudes that stayed with women or they stayed together, and it was, hey, this is my money, and you make your money. It wasn't like it's our money. When me and you got together, we, when we got together, you made more money than me, but you didn't treat me, any different. I still had the mentality like, hey, I'm the man of the house. I wasn't a dictator over you. I had you jumping on one leg and barking like a dog, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you still deferred because of our belief system, of what we believe in, but it didn't matter. I still went to work every day. I still had a side hustle. I was in 2 different schools, and you saw that in me. So I believe that was a positive impact from a generational belief that I had, growing up, So what would be a bad thing? Not a bad thing, but a negative impact on your life, something that you saw growing up or later on in life. It didn't have to be when you was younger, but just period, If it don't have to be the best one, but just whichever one comes to mind.
Well, one thing that comes to my mind is, my mom also experienced some really abusive relationships. And so I was exposed to a lot of abusive scenarios when it came to my mom. And so with my father not being in my life and me not having the exposure to a man, I really equated relationships or I didn't want to get married. I didn't have the vision of this very tale wedding. I wasn't like, oh, I want my Prince Charming to come save me, because I equated love with anger and pain and fear, and also abandonment. So I wasn't really excited about, growing up to get married. I was thinking like, well, I can just date, whatever. I can just have friends, or, it was like a fly by night situation, and that's fine. But yeah, so I think that sometimes when women or men project certain things, negative scenarios, as far as, like I said, abuse, it can definitely impact the person, the child, because that's what they're growing up witnessing. Then that's what they can either, like we talked about, I think we talked about the other day, they can start becoming an abuser, or they just don't want anything to do with it at all. And that was me. I said, well, I got kids, I was proposed to a few times. I was just like, nope, I'm good. But it was because of the things that I saw in my family. And plus, I was told the people in my family, the women in my family, weren't going to get married. That was like, we were cursed. That was the running theme for the women in my family. So in my mind, I was like, well, I guess it might not be a good idea for me to get married anyways, because it's a curse. Like, we've been cursed, and so that was an imprint on my mind the whole time. So.
Okay. All right. Well, so you got in relationships, but you knew you went in with like, I'm not staying in for the long haul.
Right.
Basically.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. They were very seasonal. I was just like, okay, well, I was never like trying to fight to stay in a relationship. I never saw that. Like, the only real relationship I saw was my grandparents. And then that was very shortly lived, because when my grandfather passed away, I was 5 years old. So the memories that I do remember, they're very vague, but they're very real. But that was the only solid relationship that I saw and that I witnessed. And I never really paid attention to like the TV shows and stuff. I was just like, oh, okay, that's just TV. But like, yeah, but that was the only thing I can really pull off of, So I think that it did ultimately negatively impact me growing up. But I think it all happens for a reason. I think we all have to go through something to have that testimony, so that we can definitely prevent it from happening to our children or to someone else, in our lives. So
for me, something that happened was that affected me negatively was the fact that I didn't see a show of emotions, a show of love in my family, whether it be from cousins, grandparents, mom, dad, whoever. I just didn't see it. So I grew up thinking like, okay, well, as like I saw the good in the men in my family working, and they was with their wives. I said, well, as long as I go to work, put the bacon on the table, so to speak, and keep a roof over our head, I'm good. The woman should appreciate that, because just like with the abuse that you saw, I took the not showing the emotion part and was like, that doesn't matter, because these women have stayed with my uncle. At the time when I, started seeing one of my uncles I think he was married the year I was born. And so then my grandparents got married in 1950. My parents had been together for 13 years before they got married, they were together 13 years, so they had been together already before I was born. So I'm thinking everything's good. So when I get in my relationships, I'm like, I ain't got to say that. I ain't got to show no emotion. I ain't got to do it as long as they know I'm working and we can go out or have fun or whatever. I'm good. And that was a totally crazy belief, that turned out to be so far from the truth. But it took me 40 years to figure that out, that you can't just be one-sided, like you told me, I'm great. Hey, I got that part down pat. I'm going to go to either go to work or get money myself. You know, I'm gonna take care of the family. I'm gonna be the security. All that's good, but I'm lacking this other part over here. That's a part of the whole. It's part of the whole wheel too. It's like you can't just have 4 out of the 5 spokes. The wheel's not gonna turn. So that was a huge thing that I realized about myself, and yeah, that was not good at all. That wasn't good. So
yeah, that is like, that's kind of like, then it becomes your default setting,
yeah.
and it's like, once you have that default setting, it's kind of hard to veer away from it if you're not being intentional about recognizing it. And then also, if you're not willing to change that default setting,
Right.
And so my default setting is to run. It's a track. They used to call me the track star. Man, she's gonna throw them shoes up on the line, like she is no joke, like she's gonna run. And so I was always known as the runner. You're like having trouble with your emotions, and it's like, but at the same time, I think with both of us, we definitely hold each other accountable in those things too. Because you're like, okay, just because that was the default setting back in the day doesn't mean that that's what it's going to be now.
Yeah.
Like, you help me in that area. Because, I'll be like, okay, do we need to? It's still there. It's still there. It needs to be uprooted up out of there. And I think it's unfortunate because a lot of people have a whole lot of that in them, and they're 40 and trying to change it.
So let me ask you this then. What do you think about something that, as far as the way you were raised, when it came to with credit, money, finances, let's start with the negative. What's something that negatively affected you that, that still kind of affects you now, or just, not now, but, that the majority of your life it affected you in a negative way?
Oh yeah. Well, my mom, for the simple fact that she was trying to like make up for the fact that my dad wasn't around. So I was her only child. So she just really, really, she spoiled me from the time I was a little girl up until I turned 15 years old. Really spoiled me. I got everything I wanted and then some.
Yeah.
And even though I still had I didn't start my work ethic until around that time, but until I turned about 15. But I think that negatively impacted me because, number one, she taught me that every other week when she got paid, we're going to go shopping. That's the rhythm. That was the rhythm. Every other Thursday, I got an allowance, more money than what most kids were getting. I was getting it. She never told me like, okay, well, let's go to the bank. Let's go save this money. I'm going to teach you how to, 10% here, 10% there. None of that. It was like, let's go get the next best thing. Let's go get your hair done. So that was for the majority of my childhood, my youth, up until, like I said, 15 and a half. And then I had to pivot real fast and do it all on my own. I had to keep it up. So since she let me go at that point, I had to figure out a way to keep all that going myself. So That's how it negatively impacted me, because she just gave it all to me, didn't show me the importance of savings or any of those things. And then she just kind of let me go. And then that was me in the world with those same principles.
So no 50, 40, whatever, 50, 30, 20 rule or whatever it is. I don't even know what it is, but whatever it is with that, I could say the same thing. My family about that, but that wasn't the most negative part, because I did learn how to save money. What negatively affected me was as far as credit. Nobody ever told me about don't go get a bunch of credit cards, which I didn't, but I did take, the student loans out, and then not paying them on time. I wasn't educated about my credit because the people in my family didn't have credit. They may have put stuff on Laraway. That was old school. Or if they did have credit, they would just go to the store. My grandmother told me, I think they bought their first bedroom set and they went to Sears or someplace and they put it on credit. And so they were paying whatever a month for it. But they didn't believe on buying anything like that, like getting themselves in a bunch of debt. The biggest debt they had was their house, to which they, paid off early. So by me not knowing that at an early age, it set me back, when I moved out on my own, because I couldn't get certain things. When I needed to get a car, I had to have a cosigner. I couldn't just go get it myself. When I wanted to move in an apartment or when I finally bought my house, my interest rate was higher because my credit was messed up. They still let me in the house, but now I'm paying a high interest rate where I'm paying 3 times as much for this house when I shouldn't have been doing that. So I did that, but then like you, I didn't keep using that as an excuse. I flipped it, and now we're in a better place. Okay. So what's something positive that somebody taught you or that you saw or that you believed?
In the finances?
Yeah.
I think I didn't really get the exposure until I got married. And that's to be honest, because I had been, from the time I was 15 and a half up until the time we got married, it was all go time for me. That means I'm on my own trying to figure it all out, robbing Peter to pay Paul to rob Peter. I'm making moves, but they all were, I never really had time to sit down and think about it. I was always in a deficit. I was always in a lower
Right.
So by the time you and I got together, I was trying to, of course, get it together, but there was just no way with one income that I could get it together. And then I still was working multiple jobs. So when I met you and you were so on point with so many things, like I just saw you making these sacrifices, and you would not like go to the drive-through or eat lunch at work. You would always have me making you a sandwich and some chips in your little apartment, and it was so like every single day the same food. And I'm like, dang, like, okay, and you just always made way with what you had, and then you knew what you couldn't. You were like, no, I can't afford that. I would never say that, and I still struggle to this day. I'm still struggling, but it was something that I saw you do, and I was like, okay, maybe I don't have to pull in every time I see something I want, go get it. Just so thank you, because you did give me that exposure. I just had never seen it from that point. So I can't draw on anyone else. I can just say you taught me or you're teaching me.
Yeah. I can also, that was an adjustment that we both, that we had. Well, I was kind of doing already, but then I took on, the role of the whole family, as far as making sure that everybody in this house had what they needed. So, yeah, definitely something. I don't know. This is not maybe generational, but it is, because this is going to sound funny, but my insurance guy that I had, my car insurance person, which I ended up getting life insurance, homeowners insurance, and it was a brother. And he told me, he said, hey, man, you ever thought about investing your money? And me and him used to talk all the time, and he became kind of like a father figure. He was like, became one of my uncles, whatever, And he first introduced me to the world of, the stock market and, things of that nature, and wanting not just putting your money up under the mattress, just not just putting it in the bank, always trying to find some way to quote unquote flip it up, flip it or whatever for the long haul, which I did take chances in other ways flipping it, but that's another subject. That's another show. Yeah, that was something that I took, and to this day, I try to still try to use that avenue. Me and you, we talk about things where not just letting our money sit in the bank. What can we do to furthermore expand on it? Whether it's through life insurance, which we both have, or investments, that we start to make. Whereas before, I may not have done that. I may have I'm gonna just save it. I know plenty of people like that. So that's definitely something positive, that I learned, and over the years. I've missed out on some stuff. Like I told you, I missed out on a few stocks that we would have been sitting pretty good, but other opportunities come. All right. So I believe I can't remember what I had on that thing right there.
Education.
You help me out there.
Well, in education. So I'll ask you, like, were there anybody or was there anything that had impacted you that made you want to pursue your education? Like, what was the family dynamic as far as education was concerned? Was it motivated or?
So in my immediate family, there was nobody that, if I'm not mistaken, there was nobody that had graduated from college. I'm almost pretty certain of that. I never knew anybody that graduated. Knew a few people that went to community college. So me, in deciding, like, I kind of did the opposite as far as what I saw. I took what may have been negative to some people and I flipped it and turned it. It gave me the motivation to be the first, or to say, I'm not going to fail. I'm going to succeed. So I did decide to go to college. I didn't finish at that point, but I still went and I still tried. And then I eventually went back and I did get a degree, and so I did feel like I accomplished something. Whereas, it's now people in my family, my cousins, they started a trend on going to school, getting a degree. But as far as my uncles, my aunties, grandparents, mother, father, yeah, I'm gonna say nobody I know outside of people my age that has a college degree. So, like I said, that's not really a negative impact because I flipped it into a positive, but it was negative because the importance of furthermore of education wasn't taught. It was about graduate high school, which was good because a lot of people didn't graduate high school. So everybody in my family did graduate high school. So I can't say that. So that was a positive because I stayed in school. I played sports and I know I wanted to stay eligible. So I had to get a certain grade point average. But as far as anything going further than that, it was about getting a job. It was about, hey, you work, you go get a job at General Motors, at Northrop, at the phone company, at Water and Power, whatever, that was like the biggest thing, so.
Nice.
So how about yourself? What, as far as your education, did you see?
Well, the only person at the time when I was growing up who had actually graduated, I think, or graduated from college was Dion. I think she was the only one. I think my cousin Rashad may have graduated from college as well. I'm not really sure on that, but not many, right? So, going through corporate America, going through supporting all these senior vice presidents and leaders throughout, different organizations, they would always tell me, Jamie, you should think about going back to school. But I was like, I got 3 kids. How am I going to? And they're like, it's never a good time. And so my leader at the time, who I was supporting, she's like, there's never going to be a good time. So you might as well start because it's always going to be, like I just said, never a good time. So I just, she really motivated me. And so she was like, I really want you to figure it out. Like, it's never going to be perfect. So just start. And I did. And I had always been a person who never would complete. I would always go to school for a few semesters and I would fall back out. So I was tired of that. It's costly, it's time consuming, and it's, wasted time. So I went back this last time, 2012, and I just went hard in the paint and I just went through. I put the pedal to the metal, and I got my first degree 2 years later, and then 2 years after that, I got my undergrad. And so, I felt really good about that because, like I said, not many people did it in my family. And I wanted to show my children that it was possible, even under the circumstances that we were under. So it was more, I did it, my why was them, but ultimately, of course, it was for me as well.
Right. And as I want to show these people something here. Oh, sorry. What happened? Did I lose you?
No.
I don't see it. Oh, there I go. I did something wrong there. I was like, okay, I just wanted to show the people that we ain't lying when we say we have degrees. Now, I don't know what happened right there. The screen just went blank. I was like, what's going on here, man? Sorry about that.
Okay.
So all that, those three things are just, we can go on and on about all the stuff that we both have experienced, as far as our generational beliefs. And it could be like we were talking about earlier before we got on camera about our thoughts about the generation. We was discussing, this subject. It could be because it just wasn't people in your family that affected you, because your last thing you spoke about was somebody at work encouraged you, just say, just go, and you saw the CEOs, you working for the CEOs, the COOs and vice presidents. And at that time, a college degree meant more than probably what it does now. Not that it's invalid, but you made the decision to be like, you know what? I don't want to get stuck making my ceiling is a certain amount of money. You want it to be like, I want to be able to go higher and higher. Mm-hmm. And that person came along who wasn't in your family, but who was somebody that you evidently trusted enough to say, at least think about it. And once you did, then you start going to school. And like you said, now you're a college graduate. You have your undergrad degree, which a lot of people in this country can't say that they have. And believe it or not, it has paid off for you. I do know that, even though you may not be in your exact field, but just the way the universe works and how God works, he's seen that you started something and you finished it, so he's rewarded you. So just wanted to say that, give you your props. Since I do know a little bit more about you than everybody else that's on here, but
thank you.
I wanted to thank you for taking your time out right now to discuss these subjects. I'm pretty sure this won't be your last time on here, and next time we'll get into something a little bit more juicier. This was a PG version,
Thank you.
But like I said, thanks for coming on here. And until next time, everybody, we will, and that's it. See you next time.